The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and fate. But what happens when something from beyond the stars arrives, something powered not by midi-chlorians, but by genius, determination, and an arc reactor burning brighter than a newborn sun? The galaxy was about to find out that some legends aren't born from the Force at all. The jungle moon of Yavin 4 had finally begun to quiet after the rebellion's desperate victory over the Death Star. Technicians worked around the clock to repair battered X-wings, medics tended to the wounded, and sentries watched the skies for the inevitable Imperial retaliation. The ancient Massus Sea temples that housed the rebel base hummed with exhausted celebration and anxious preparation in equal measure. They had struck a blow against the Empire, yes, but everyone knew Palpatine's revenge would be swift and merciless. Lieutenant Mara Chen stood her watch on the eastern perimeter, scanning the emerald canopy through macro binoculars as the system's orange sun dipped toward the horizon. The humidity made her uniform cling uncomfortably, and the constant buzz of Yavin's insect life had long since stopped being annoying and become simply background noise. Another tedious evening watch, another night of waiting for TIE fighters that might never come. Then the sky split open. It wasn't hyperspace. Mara had seen enough ships arrive to know the telltale blue tunnel of faster-than-light travel. This was something else entirely. A tear in space itself, crackling with energy that shifted between gold, purple, and colors her brain couldn't quite process. Reality seemed to hurt around it, as if the universe was rejecting whatever forced its way through. Something metallic hurtled through the rift, trailing fire and sparks, spinning wildly as it plummeted toward the jungle. The anomaly collapsed behind it with a sound like a thunderclap reversed, leaving only a falling object wreathed in flames, and the smell of ozone so strong it burned Mara's nostrils even from kilometers away. "Command, this is Eastern Perimeter," Mara shouted into her comlink, not taking her eyes off the falling object. "We have an unidentified craft inbound, bearing 273, coming in fast and not under control. It's..." She paused, trying to find words for what she was seeing. "It's not any ship configuration I've ever seen. Looks more like armor. Request immediate dispatch of recovery team to projected impact site." The object, whatever it was, smashed through the jungle canopy 3 kilometers northeast of her position. The impact sent a flock of runyips screeching into the air and shook the ground hard enough that Mara had to grab onto a tree trunk for stability. Smoke rose from the crash site in a thick black column that stank of burning metal and something chemical her nose didn't recognize. 20 minutes later, Mara found herself part of a 10-person recovery team led by Captain Rallo Sindor, a grizzled veteran of the Clone Wars who'd seen things most rebels couldn't imagine. They moved through the jungle with weapons raised, expecting everything from an Imperial probe droid to a separatist leftover to a crashed pirate vessel. What they found was none of those things. The crater was 15 meters wide and still steaming. At its center lay a figure in red and gold armor, unlike anything in the known galaxy. The design was sleek, almost organic in how the plates flowed together. Nothing like the angular, utilitarian aesthetic of Imperial or Rebel tech. A circular light glowed in the chest piece, pulsing weakly like a dying heartbeat, casting blue-white illumination across the surrounding wreckage. The armor was clearly damaged, deep gouges in the chest plate, one arm twisted at an unnatural angle, the faceplate cracked and dark. "Is it a droid?" one of the soldiers whispered. "Biosigns detected," replied their medical officer, running a scanner over the prone figure. Humanoid inside the armor. Human by the readings, heart rate elevated but stable. "He's alive. Get a stretcher down here." Sindor ordered, never lowering his blaster rifle. And somebody find out what that light in his chest is. If it's a power core, I want to know if it's about to explode. As the team prepared to move the mysterious figure, the faceplate suddenly slid back with a hiss of escaping air. The face revealed was human indeed. Black hair, a neatly trimmed goatee, and brown eyes that snapped open with sudden awareness despite the obvious pain. The man's gaze darted around the crater, taking in the jungle, the unfamiliar soldiers, and the alien sky with an expression that cycled rapidly through confusion, analysis, and something that might have been dismay. "Okay," the man said, his voice rough but carrying an unmistakable note of sarcasm even in his current condition. "Either I hit my head harder than I thought, or Rocket's idea of recalibrating the quantum field harmonics just yeeted me into the worst Renaissance fair in the multiverse." He tried to sit up, winced, and settled back down. "Those are blasters, right? Please tell me those are prop blasters, and I'm about to get served complimentary blue milk." The rebels stared at him in collective bafflement. "Sir, you need medical attention," the medical officer said carefully, as if addressing someone who might be mentally compromised. "We're going to transport you to our base. Can you tell us your name and where you came from?" The man in the armor actually laughed, despite clearly being in pain. "My name is Tony Stark. I'm from Earth, which is apparently not in this galaxy, and I came from..." He paused, looking up at the darkening sky where unfamiliar constellations were beginning to emerge. "From somewhere that seems very, very far away now." He focused on the circular device glowing in his chest, and his expression hardened. "FRIDAY, status report." A female voice emerged from the armor, distorted and glitching. "Bow. Systems. Prim. Funk. Damaged. Cannot. Yeah, I got that," Tony muttered. He looked back at Sindor and his team. "So here's the thing. I don't suppose you folks have any vibranium lying around. No? How about a fully equipped nanotech fabrication lab? Also no. Okay, what do you have? And more importantly," his eyes narrowed as he noted their mismatched equipment, the wear on their gear, the barely concealed exhaustion in their postures. "Who are you? And why do you look like you're one bad day away from a very ugly defeat? If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you." Sindor exchanged glances with Mara, then made a decision. "We're the Rebel Alliance, and if you're not with the Empire, then we might just have saved each other's lives. Let's get you patched up, and you can tell us all about this Earth of yours." As they loaded Tony Stark onto the stretcher, his arc reactor pulsed steadily in the jungle darkness, a tiny star from another universe, fallen into a galaxy desperately in need of hope, innovation, and perhaps a little bit of genius-level arrogance. The war against the Empire was about to become far more interesting. The command center of the rebel base thrummed with controlled chaos. Holographic star maps flickered above tactical tables while officers shouted coordinates and status reports across the cavernous chamber. Princess Leia Organa stood at the center of it all, a pillar of calm authority despite the exhaustion that shadowed her eyes. The victory at Yavin had cost them dearly, and intelligence reported 3 Imperial Star Destroyers en route to their position. They had perhaps 72 hours before evacuation became mandatory. She didn't have time for mysteries, but the mysterious stranger in the medbay had become the base's worst-kept secret within an hour of his arrival. "Your Highness," Captain Sindor said as he approached, datapad in hand. "The individual from the crash site is stable. Chief Medical Officer Colonia says his injuries are mostly superficial, bruising, minor lacerations, 1 fractured rib. But the technology he's carrying..." Sindor shook his head. Ma'am, I've served in this military for 30 years. I've never seen anything like it. Leia studied the preliminary report on Sindor's datapad, her diplomatic training keeping her expression neutral even as her mind raced. The armor's composition defied easy analysis, some kind of gold titanium alloy that didn't match any known manufacturing process. The power source in the chest was generating clean energy at levels that should require a generator the size of a land speeder, and the AI system, though damaged, represented computational sophistication beyond even Imperial standards. "Has he said anything useful?" she asked. "He's been asking questions. A lot of questions about where he is, what year it is, who the major galactic powers are. He seems..." Sindor hesitated. "Genuinely confused, Your Highness. Either he's the best actor in the galaxy, or he's telling the truth about being from somewhere else entirely. Or he's an Imperial intelligence operative with a very elaborate cover story." Leia handed back the datapad. "I'll speak with him myself. Have security standing by, but keep them outside. If he is what he claims, I don't want to start this relationship with overt threats." The medbay was a converted temple chamber, its ancient stone walls now lined with medical equipment salvaged from a dozen different sources. Tony Stark sat on a medical cot, his armor opened like a mechanical flower to allow access to his torso. The arc reactor glowed steadily in his chest. And Leia found herself momentarily transfixed by it. That impossible light, clearly technological yet somehow organic in the way it pulsed with his heartbeat. He looked up as she entered, and something flickered in his eyes. Assessment, recognition of authority, and something else, a weariness that spoke of battles fought and responsibilities shouldered. "Let me guess," he said before she could speak. "You're in charge, or close to it. The way everyone snapped to attention when you walked through that corridor was either military discipline or really impressive cult leadership." He gestured to himself with his one functioning hand. "Tony Stark, we've established that. You are?" "Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan," she replied, watching his reaction carefully. "I'm a member of the Alliance High Command, and yes, we need to establish exactly what you are, Mr. Stark, and whether you pose a threat to this base. Call me Tony. And I'm going to blow your mind here. I'm actually not a threat. I'm just a guy who was testing experimental propulsion tech, got caught in what I'm pretty sure was a space stone energy surge, and ended up punching through whatever dimensional barrier separates my universe from yours." He said it casually, as if interdimensional travel was a minor inconvenience. "The good news is I'm a futurist, philanthropist, and occasionally a superhero. The bad news is I'm about 9 quintillion light years from my workshop, my AI is scrambled, and this armor is running on about 65% efficiency." Leia processed this, searching for deception and finding only honesty. The man was either insane, telling the truth, or so skilled at lying that she had no hope of detecting it. "You mentioned a space stone. What is that?" "One of 6 infinity stones, cosmic artifacts of immense power left over from the universe's creation. Long story, lots of universe-ending implications, saved the galaxy a few times." Tony's expression darkened slightly, though apparently not well enough to avoid getting yeeted into another dimension entirely. "And you claim to be from Earth? That's not a planet in any system we have charted. Different universe, remember? Where I'm from, Earth is the center of quite a bit of cosmic drama. We've got gods, aliens, sorcerers, super soldiers. It's a whole thing." He looked around the medbay, taking in the mismatched equipment with an engineer's critical eye. "But right now, I'm more interested in your situation. You're calling yourselves the Rebel Alliance, which suggests there's something you're rebelling against. And given the state of your tech, no offense, but some of this equipment looks like it was decommissioned before I was born. I'm guessing you're not winning." Leia felt a flash of irritation at his presumption, but she couldn't deny the accuracy of his assessment. "We're fighting the Galactic Empire, a tyrannical regime that dissolved the Republic, hunted the Jedi to near extinction, and rules through fear and military might." "Jedi," Tony repeated, latching on to the word. "What's a Jedi?" "Peacekeepers, warriors who wielded the Force, an energy field created by all living things. They were the guardians of justice for over 1,000 generations." Leia's voice softened with old grief. "The Empire destroyed them. Only a handful remain. The Force." Tony's expression shifted to something between scientific fascination and skepticism. "An energy field, can you measure it, quantify it, or is this more of a religious thing?" "It's real," Leia said firmly, though she herself had never been Force-sensitive. "I've seen what it can do, what the Jedi could do." "Okay, so you've got space wizards, an evil empire, and a scrappy rebellion fighting with hand-me-down equipment against overwhelming odds." Tony actually smiled. "You know what? I've heard this story before. Different universe, same basic plot, and you want to know the best part?" He tapped the arc reactor in his chest. "I've solved this story before, multiple times. This isn't a story, Mr. Stark. Tony, this is survival. We just destroyed the Empire's ultimate weapon. But they have fleets, armies, and resources we can't match. We're evacuating this base in 3 days because we know they're coming. So forgive me if I'm not impressed by your confidence." Tony stood up, the damaged armor shifting around him as servos whined in protest. He moved to the viewport, looking out at the jungle and the unfamiliar stars beyond. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its casual arrogance. "I led a team against an army that was going to wipe out half of all life in my universe. We were outgunned, outmanned, and out of options. People I cared about died, but we won because we were smarter, faster, and willing to do whatever it took." He turned back to face her. "Your rebellion needs 3 things to survive: better technology, better intelligence, and better strategy. I can help with at least 2 of those. Maybe all 3 once I get my systems back online." "And why would you do that?" Leia asked. "This isn't your fight. You could hide, find a way home, or simply walk away." Tony was quiet for a moment, and Leia saw something in his eyes that reminded her of every person who'd ever joined the rebellion, knowing they might not survive. Conviction born from witnessing injustice. Because tyranny is tyranny, no matter what universe it's in. Because I spent years building weapons that ended up in the wrong hands, and I've been trying to atone for that ever since. And because... He gestured at the base around them. "You people remind me of someone. A stubborn, brilliant, impossibly brave someone who believed you could win a fight even when the math said otherwise." He extended his hand to her. "So here's my pitch, Princess. Let me take a look at your tech. Let me see what you're working with. Give me access to a workshop. Doesn't have to be fancy. And some raw materials. In return, I'll show you what a genius billionaire philanthropist can do with duct tape and desperation." Leia looked at his outstretched hand, weighing the risk against the potential reward. They needed every advantage they could get, and something in Tony Stark's eyes told her he was exactly what he claimed to be. Someone who'd fought against impossible odds and found a way to win. She took his hand. "You'll work under supervision. Everything you build gets reviewed by our engineers before it's deployed. And if I find out you're working for the Empire, you'll have me executed in some dramatically satisfying way, I'm sure." Tony's grip was firm. "Deal, now." About that workshop. As Leia led him out of the medbay, flanked by security, she couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had just shifted on its axis. The Empire had the Force on their side through Darth Vader. Perhaps the rebellion had just found their own kind of power, the power of human ingenuity, genius without limits, and an arc reactor that burned like a star. Outside, in the Imperial Star Destroyer Devastator, Darth Vader stood in his meditation chamber, feeling a disturbance in the Force. Something new had entered the galaxy, something that didn't belong, something that made the Force itself uncertain. He would need to investigate this anomaly personally. The workshop they gave Tony was barely worthy of the name. A converted storage bay in the lower levels of the Masasi temple, it smelled of mildew and lubricant in equal measure. Workbenches salvaged from a dozen different sources lined the walls, covered in tools that ranged from serviceable to prehistoric. A single overhead light flickered intermittently, casting dancing shadows across the stone floor. Tony had worked in worse conditions. A cave in Afghanistan came to mind, but not by much. "Home sweet home," he muttered, surveying his new domain with hands on his hips. The Mark 50 armor stood in the corner like a wounded sentinel, its nanotech surface still showing the scars of interdimensional travel. FRI Day's holographic interface sputtered occasionally, trying and failing to achieve full functionality. "The equipment is limited," admitted Chief Engineer Toran Bisk, a Duros with rust-colored skin and eyes that held decades of making miracles from scraps. "But it's what we have. Most of our tools and parts are salvaged from Imperial wrecks or bought second-hand from smugglers. Credits are scarce." Tony picked up what looked like a hydrospanner, the galactic equivalent of a wrench, and tested its weight. "Okay, let's establish some ground rules. First, I need an inventory of everything you've got. Raw materials, power sources, computational hardware, weapons tech, propulsion systems, all of it. Second, I need your best technicians in here, people who can think on their feet and aren't afraid to break things in the process of making them better." Bisk's facial ridges wrinkled with something between amusement and skepticism. "Mr. Stark, we've been fighting this war with limited resources for years. I've seen every trick, every shortcut, every desperate innovation. What makes you think?" Tony interrupted him by walking to the arc reactor mounted in his chest, pressing a small control and projecting a holographic schematic from the damaged armor. The image was unstable, glitching every few seconds, but it showed enough. A miniaturized fusion reactor producing 3 gigajoules per second, clean and sustainable. Bisk stared. "That's impossible. A reactor that size couldn't generate that much power without consuming itself or irradiating everything within 100 meters. Where I'm from, impossible is just a Tuesday." Tony collapsed the hologram. "This reactor is based on an element I synthesized, a new isotope that shouldn't exist according to conventional physics. I had to discover new physics to make it work. That's what I do, Chief Engineer. I rewrite the rules." Over the next 6 hours, Tony tore through the rebellion's inventory like a man possessed. He cataloged everything. Tibanna gas canisters from blaster rifles, hyperdrive components scavenged from destroyed fighters, power cells, targeting computers, even the synthetic crystals used in cheaper blaster models. His mind worked 3 steps ahead, seeing connections and possibilities that no one else could perceive. "This focusing lens," he said, holding up a component from a broken blaster rifle. "It uses a kyber crystal substitute, right? Synthetic, lower quality than what you'd get in a lightsaber, but same basic principle, amplifying and directing energy." "Correct," Bisk confirmed, watching Tony with growing interest. "Imperial regulation required all kyber crystals to be surrendered for the Death Star project. We make do with synthetics." "And these power cells?" Tony gestured to a pile of depleted energy packs. You're throwing them away after a single use? That's insane. They've still got residual charge. You're just not harvesting it efficiently. His hands moved rapidly, pulling components from different sources, his engineering instincts overriding the unfamiliar technology through sheer analytical force. Give me 2 days. I can build you a recharging station that'll extend cell life by 60%. Maybe more if I can figure out how to integrate arc reactor principles. Bisk exchanged glances with his team, a human woman named Paula and a Mon Calamari named Torsho who'd been watching in silence. Mr. Stark, if you could do that, do you understand how much that would change for us? We lose supply ships regularly. Being able to reuse power cells could mean the difference between holding a position and retreating. I'm just getting started. Tony's eyes gleamed with the particular manic energy that always accompanied his best work. But I need something in return. My armor's nanotech is degraded. I need to understand how your technology works so I can adapt. These droids you use, they're fully sentient AIs, right? Droids have varying levels of intelligence, Paula explained. Astromech units like R2 series have sophisticated problem-solving capabilities. Protocol droids handle language and cultural databases. Battle droids are less sophisticated. I need to interface with one, preferably an astromech. FRIDY is corrupted, but if I can reverse engineer how your AI systems compensate for limited processing power, I might be able to rebuild her architecture using local tech. That's asking a lot, Bisk said slowly. Droids are expensive, difficult to replace. Then think of it as an investment. Tony met his eyes steadily. I fix your droid, I learn your systems, I can build you better equipment. Everyone wins. Unless you'd rather keep fighting with the same tech that's been losing you battles for years. It was harsh, but true. Bisk nodded slowly. I'll speak with Command. In the meantime, show me this recharging station design. They worked through the night. Tony's hands moved with practiced precision despite the unfamiliar tools, his mind adapting to galactic technology with frightening speed. He'd always been best when he was building, when he could take chaos and impose order through engineering genius. The limitations didn't frustrate him, they energized him. This was the puzzle that would keep him sharp until he found a way home. Assuming he wanted to go home, the thought flickered through his mind unbidden. In his universe, he'd lost people, made sacrifices, carried burdens that never seemed to ease. Here, for the first time in what felt like forever, he was just a man with a toolbox and a problem to solve. Mr. Stark, Paula's voice interrupted his thoughts. We're getting reports of unusual Imperial activity in the sector. Long-range scans detected a probe droid near the outer perimeter. It was destroyed before it could transmit, but they're looking for you, Tony finished. The Empire doesn't like mysteries. You blow up their Death Star, they're going to take their time hunting you down. He set down the power cell regulator he'd been modifying. How long until you evacuate? 68 hours, Bisk said quietly. We're loading transport ships now. Once we're gone, this base will be abandoned. And you'll be vulnerable during the evacuation. Transport ships are slow, easily tracked. Tony's tactical mind kicked into gear. You need cover, distractions, multiple exit vectors so they can't track all of you at once. We're aware of the risks, Bisk said, a note of weariness in his voice. We've been running for years, Mr. Stark. This is simply another evacuation. Tony looked at the arc reactor components spread across his workbench, then at the rebels who'd been working alongside him through the night. These people were exhausted, under-equipped, and facing an enemy that could afford to lose 1,000 soldiers for every rebel killed. They were brave to the point of recklessness, and they were going to die unless something changed. He thought of the Avengers, of fighting Thanos, of snapping his fingers and feeling the infinity stones burn through his body, of sacrifice. "Bisk," he said slowly, "how much explosive yield can your transport ships carry without compromising speed?" The Duros frowned. "We don't pack explosives in evacuation transports. Too dangerous if we're hit." "Wrong answer. You pack them in some transports. Decoys. Make them look fully loaded, but fill them with every explosive you can spare. When the Empire shows up, and they will, you remote detonate. Create massive sensor disruption. Debris fields. Thermal blooms that'll blind their scanners." Tony's hands sketched the concept in the air. "Your real transports use the chaos to escape on different vectors. The Empire wastes time investigating wreckage while your people get clear." Parla's eyes widened. "That's actually brilliant. Ruthless, but brilliant. I've got plenty of ruthless ideas where that came from." Tony allowed himself a slight smile. "But first, let's finish this recharging station. Can't have your people running out of power mid-escape." As they returned to work, none of them noticed the small Imperial probe droid fragment that Parla had brought in for analysis. Its optical sensor had been destroyed, its transmitter disabled. But the tiny secondary recording unit buried in its chassis had captured everything. The fragment's automatic upload protocol activated, sending a compressed data burst through the base's own communication arrays, piggybacking on routine transmissions. The signal would reach the Devastator within hours, and Darth Vader would learn of the stranger with impossible technology who spoke of universes beyond the Force's reach. The holographic transmission materialized in the command center with Imperial precision, a figure in crisp gray uniform, his face bearing the distinctive ridges and pale skin of a Chagrian. Admiral Tesfan Graf commanded the Imperial Star Destroyer Indomitable, one of 3 vessels currently converging on the Yavin system. His expression was carefully neutral, the practiced diplomacy of an officer who'd survived decades of Imperial politics. "Princess Organa," Graf's hologram said with a slight bow, "I transmit under a flag of temporary truce, as permitted by the conventions of civilized warfare. I have a proposal that may interest the Rebel Alliance." Leia stood at the tactical display, flanked by General Jan Dodonna and Admiral Akbar. The rebellion's leadership had assembled quickly when the transmission request came through. Imperial communications were never routine and never without danger. "The Empire doesn't negotiate with terrorists, Admiral," Leia replied coolly. "What's changed?" "Pragmatism, Your Highness. We've detected an anomaly at your location, a technological signature unlike anything in Imperial databases. Our intelligence suggests you've acquired an asset, one that Lord Vader himself has taken personal interest in." Graf's image leaned forward slightly. "We're prepared to offer safe passage for your entire base evacuation. Every ship, every soldier, every piece of equipment. No pursuit, no engagement. In exchange, you turn over the individual responsible for the anomalous energy readings." The command center went silent. Leia felt every eye turn toward her, felt the weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders once again. "You want us to hand over a refugee," she said carefully, "someone who's committed no crime against the Empire. We want to understand what we detected, the energy signature that appeared 2 days ago, the technology that defies our understanding." Graf's tone remained diplomatic, but there was steel beneath it. "Lord Vader believes this individual poses a potential threat to galactic stability. Surely you can understand our concern." "It's a trap," Admiral Akbar said quietly, his bulbous eyes fixed on the hologram. "They'll take this person and destroy us anyway." "Perhaps," Graf acknowledged, apparently able to hear them. "Or perhaps we're offering genuine clemency because we recognize that your rebellion, while misguided, is at least composed of people we understand. This newcomer is something else entirely, something that concerns powers beyond your comprehension. The transmission ended before Leia could respond, leaving the command center in tense silence. "We're not seriously considering this," General Dodonna said firmly. The aging tactician had seen too many Imperial promises broken to trust them now. "Stark may be an unknown quantity, but he's helped us already. The power cell recharging station alone will save lives. And if the Empire is willing to offer safe passage for all of us in exchange for one man," Akbar countered, "then Mr. Stark represents either incredible value or incredible danger, possibly both." Leia closed her eyes briefly, thinking. The rebellion couldn't afford to make enemies of potential allies, but neither could it ignore the implications of the Empire's offer. If Vader himself was interested, "Find Stark," she ordered. "Bring him here. He deserves to know what's being offered." Tony was elbow-deep in a disassembled astromech droid when the security team arrived. The R4 unit, on loan from a skeptical pilot, lay in pieces across his workbench, its components spread in organized chaos that only Tony's mind could navigate. He'd been analyzing the droid's neural network for 3 hours, fascinated by how efficiently it processed data with such limited computational resources. "Princess wants to see you," the lead security officer said. "Now." Tony wiped grease from his hands. "Tell her I'm in the middle of something. This droid's cognitive matrix uses a distributed processing system that's actually kind of genius. Primitive, but genius. Give me another hour." "It's not a request, Mr. Stark." The tone made Tony look up. He saw the tension in their postures, the way their hands hovered near their weapons without quite touching them. Something had changed. "Okay," he said slowly. "Let me just..." He reached for the arc reactor interface on his workbench. "Leave the armor," the officer said. Tony's eyes narrowed. "That's not happening. The armor doesn't come off. Well, it does, but that's a medical procedure I'd rather avoid explaining. We have orders, and I have an arc reactor keeping shrapnel from shredding my heart," Tony interrupted, tapping his chest where the glow was visible through his shirt. "This isn't optional equipment, it's life support. So unless your orders include watching me bleed out, we're bringing the armor." The officer hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Fine, but no sudden movements." The command center was crowded when they arrived, more officers than usual, more tension in the air. Leia stood at the central holotable, and Tony immediately recognized the look on her face. He'd seen it on Steve Rogers, on Nick Fury, on his own reflection in the mirror. The look of someone weighing impossible choices. "They want me," he said before anyone could speak. "The Empire. They detected the arc reactor signature, and now they want to know what I am." Leia nodded slowly. "Admiral Graff offered safe passage for the entire base. Every person here gets to leave without Imperial engagement in exchange for you. And you're actually considering it." Tony's voice was flat, controlled. He'd played this game before. The calculus of sacrifice, the mathematics of who lives and who dies, and "I'm considering all our options," Leia said firmly. 3 Star Destroyers are converging on this system. When they arrive, they'll blockade the planet and destroy anything that tries to leave. Our evacuation depends on speed and stealth. If we're caught in orbit, everyone dies, Tony finished. "I get it. Trolley problem, Galactic Edition. Save a few hundred rebels or protect one guy who literally just got here." He walked to the holotable, studying the tactical display. 3 red markers approaching Yavin, dozens of blue markers representing rebel transports and fighters. The math was ugly. "What does your gut tell you?" "That the Empire doesn't negotiate in good faith," General Dodonna said. "That Vader wants you for reasons we don't understand. that giving you up might buy us nothing except your capture. It's a trap, Admiral Akbar added with certainty. Tony nodded slowly, his mind racing through scenarios and probabilities. In his universe, he'd learned to read power dynamics, to understand what motivated different players. Vader wanted him, that much was clear. But why the arc reactor technology, the armor, or something else? Here's what I think, Tony said. Your Admiral Akbar is right. It's absolutely a trap, but it's also an opportunity. He looked at Leia. They're scared, maybe not of me specifically, but of what I represent. Unknown technology, unknown capabilities. They're offering you safe passage because they want me badly enough to show weakness. That tells me everything. It tells you they're willing to lie to get what they want, Leia countered. Oh, definitely, but it also tells me they're not confident in a straight fight. 3 Star Destroyers sounds impressive, but you blew up the Death Star with a handful of fighters. They remember that. They're worried. Tony's fingers drummed on the holotable. So here's my counter-proposal. I'll meet with them. Not a surrender, a negotiation. Face to face. And while I'm keeping their attention, you evacuate. Use my meeting as cover. That's suicide, Dodonna said flatly. Maybe. Or maybe it's exactly the distraction you need. Tony met Leia's eyes. I've faced down gods, Princess. Literally. I've gone toe-to-toe with a purple space warlord who could erase half of all life with a snap. I think I can handle one Imperial Admiral and whatever entourage he brings. You haven't met Darth Vader, Leia said quietly. He's not an admiral. He's not even human anymore, more machine than man. And he commands the Force in ways that make the impossible routine. He'll see through any deception. He'll tear the truth from your mind if he chooses. Tony absorbed this, processing. A Force-sensitive cyborg with mind-reading capabilities. That was concerning, but not unprecedented. Thanos had the Mind Stone. Loki had illusions. Every universe had its psychic threats. Then I'll need insurance, he said. Something he can't predict because it's not from this universe. Chief Engineer Bisk, how quickly can you fabricate a device to my specifications? Depends on the specifications, Bisk said warily. Tony pulled up his damaged FRIDY interface, forcing the corrupted AI to project a schematic. Electromagnetic pulse generator, localized, controllable radius. My armor's shielded against it, but I'm betting Imperial tech isn't. It won't stop the Force, but it'll stop everything else long enough for me to make my exit if things go sideways. You're serious about this, Leia said. It wasn't a question. I'm serious about giving you a chance to evacuate, and I'm serious about not letting space fascists intimidate me into submission. Tony's jaw set with familiar determination. I didn't survive my universe's apocalypse to roll over for this one's bad guys. So yeah, Princess, I'm serious. Let me be the distraction you need. Let me do what I do best. Which is? Tony smiled, and there was something sharp in it, something dangerous. Improvise. Outside the base, in the depths of space, the Devastator received Admiral Graff's report. Darth Vader stood in the command center, saw his respirator breathing steady and mechanical as he processed the information. The stranger would meet them. Alone, confident. They're incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Vader looked forward to discovering which. Luke Skywalker found Tony in the workshop at dawn, working by the light of the arc reactor and a single flickering glow rod. The young Jedi, if he could even call himself that yet, had barely slept since the Death Star's destruction. His dreams were full of fire, of voices calling through the Force, of his father's lightsaber humming in his hand, and now of this stranger who'd fallen from the sky radiating an energy that made the Force itself feel uncertain. "You're up early," Tony said without turning around. He was reassembling the R4 unit, his hands moving with mechanical precision. "Or you never went to sleep. I'm familiar with both." "How did you know I was here?" Luke asked, stepping into the workshop. "I didn't make any sound." "Reflection in the arc reactor housing. Plus you smell like ozone and something I can't quite identify." "Not sweat, not fear, something else." Tony glanced back, assessing. "You're the kid who made the shot, right? The one in a million torpedo run that shouldn't have been possible?" Luke blinked. "How did you?" "Heard the pilots talking. They think it was luck, maybe instinct. But you and I both know it was something more." Tony set down his tools and turned fully to face Luke. "This force thing, you can feel it?" "I'm learning," Luke said carefully. Ben Kenobi had barely begun his training before Vader cut him down. Now Luke was left with fragments of knowledge, a lightsaber, and the constant awareness of something vast and incomprehensible flowing through the galaxy. It's not something you control, it's something you let flow through you. You become part of it. That sounds incredibly passive for something so powerful. Tony walked to a workbench, pulled out 2 ration bars, and tossed one to Luke. "In my experience, power is something you harness, direct, and apply with precision. Letting it flow through you sounds like a good way to lose control." "The Force isn't like technology," Luke said, biting into the ration bar despite its cardboard texture. "It's alive, conscious in a way. When I made that shot, I wasn't controlling anything. I was trusting, letting go." "Letting go," Tony repeated the words like they were in an alien language. "Yeah, that's not really my skill set. I'm more of a maintain absolute control or die trying kind of guy." He leaned against the workbench, studying Luke with genuine curiosity. "But you're here for a reason. What's on your mind, kid?" Luke hesitated, then spoke in a rush. "The princess told me about the Empire's offer, that you're going to meet with them. That's insane. Vader will kill you. Or worse, he'll turn you. That's what he does. He breaks people." "Noted, but I've dealt with people who break people before. Comes with the superhero territory." Tony's tone was light, but his eyes were serious. "Besides, I'm not planning on getting broken. I'm planning on buying your people time to escape. Big difference." "You don't understand what he is," Luke insisted, and there was something raw in his voice. "I felt him on the Death Star. His presence in the Force is like a wound in reality. Cold, endless. He killed my mentor right in front of me, and I couldn't do anything to stop it." Tony's expression softened slightly. "Your mentor, the old man in the robes?" "Obi-Wan?" "Ben Kenobi. He was training me to be a Jedi, to use the Force the way my father did before." Luke's voice caught. "Before Vader killed him too. That's a lot of weight for someone your age." Tony was quiet for a moment, and Luke saw something shift behind his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or memory. "I lost someone too. Someone who taught me that with great power comes great responsibility. Cliché, but true. And I lost people fighting a war I couldn't afford to lose. So I get it, Luke. I get the anger, the need for revenge. The feeling that if you could just be stronger, faster, better, you could prevent the next loss. Then you understand why going to meet Vader is suicide. I understand why it seems that way." Tony pushed off from the workbench and walked to where his armor stood. The nanites had partially repaired overnight, not fully functional, but better than they'd been. But here's the thing about impossible situations. They're only impossible until someone changes the rules. Your Force is one set of rules. My technology is another. Vader's probably never faced anyone who operates on completely different principles than he does. The Force binds everything, Luke said, echoing Ben's teachings. "You can't escape it." "Watch me." Tony tapped the arc reactor. "This doesn't run on the Force. It runs on physics that don't exist in your galaxy. My AI, when it's working properly, processes information faster than any organic brain. My armor can analyze threats and respond in microseconds. I'm not saying I'm invincible. I've died once already. Kind of. But I'm saying Vader's playbook might not work on me." Luke felt something through the Force then, not from Tony himself, whose presence remained strangely muted, almost invisible, but from the future, a vision of possibility branching in impossible directions. Fire and lightning, metal screaming, a choice that would reshape everything. "I'm coming with you," Luke heard himself say. "Absolutely not. You need someone who understands the Force, who can sense Vader's intentions, who can get killed trying to protect a stranger from another universe." Tony shook his head. "No deal, kid. You've got a destiny here. I can feel it, not with the Force, but with basic pattern recognition. You're important to this rebellion's future. I'm just a guy passing through." Ben used to say there's no such thing as coincidence, that the Force brings people together for a reason. Luke stepped closer, his hand unconsciously moving to the lightsaber at his belt. "You crashed here, out of infinite places in the galaxy. You crashed at the one rebel base, right after we destroyed the Death Star, right when the Empire's hunting us. That's not random." Tony opened his mouth to argue, then paused. In his experience, there was always a reason. Sometimes chaos, sometimes fate, sometimes just bad luck with cosmic implications. The Space Stone had pulled him here. But why? Why this galaxy? Why this moment? "Okay," he said slowly. "Let's say you're right. Let's say there's some grand cosmic reason I'm here. That doesn't mean you need to throw your life away on a diplomatic mission that's 90% likely to go sideways." "Then teach me," Luke said suddenly. "You said Vader's never faced someone who operates on different principles. Teach me to think like you do. Show me how technology and the Force might work together instead of separately." Tony stared at him. "Kid, I'm not a teacher. I'm barely a functional adult most days." "Neither am I. But Ben saw something in me, something worth dying for." Luke's voice steadied with determination. "If you're going to face Vader, you need every advantage. And maybe I need to learn that there's more than one way to fight the Empire." In the silence that followed, Tony considered. The kid had potential, raw, untrained, but genuine. And he was right about one thing. Understanding how this Force business worked might give Tony an edge. Know your enemy's capabilities, know your own limitations, find the intersection where you have advantage. "Fine," Tony said, "but we're not calling it teaching. We're calling it collaborative research. You explain the Force, I explain physics. We see if there's overlap. Deal?" Luke extended his hand and Tony shook it. As their hands clasped, Luke felt something through the Force, a flicker of connection, not to Tony himself, but to the potential futures that branched from this moment. Paths that led to victory and defeat, hope and despair, all tangled together. "Deal," Luke said. "When do we start?" "Right now." Tony released his hand and pulled up a holographic display from his damaged armor. "Explain to me how you made that impossible shot. Every detail. What you felt, what you saw, what happened in your mind. I want data." As Luke began to speak, describing the moment he let go and trusted the Force, Tony's analytical mind started building models, creating frameworks to understand something that defied conventional physics. The arc reactor pulsed steadily, its light mixing with the soft glow of Luke's lightsaber as the young Jedi ignited it to demonstrate. Neither of them noticed Princess Leia watching from the doorway, her expression unreadable. She'd come to tell Tony that Admiral Graff was waiting for his response. That time was running out, but seeing Luke and Tony together, technology and the Force, two impossibilities finding common ground, she hesitated. Perhaps there was hope in unexpected places after all. She turned and walked away, giving them more time. The galaxy could wait a few more hours. In the depths of space, Darth Vader meditated in his hyperbaric chamber. The only place he could remove his mask and feel something close to peace. He reached out through the Force, searching for the anomaly, the stranger who'd appeared like a tear in the fabric of destiny, and found nothing. A void where a presence should be, an absence that screamed louder than any Force signature. Vader's eyes opened in the darkness. This would require his personal attention. The neutral meeting ground was a barren moon designated RZ7-6113 in Imperial star charts, a lifeless rock of gray dust and jagged craters orbiting a dying red giant. No atmosphere, no resources, no strategic value. Perfect for a parley that neither side trusted. Tony stood in the cargo hold of a rebel transport, watching through the viewport as the moon's surface grew larger. His armor was sealed, fully pressurized, running diagnostics that painted his HUD with information in a language FRIDI was still learning to translate. Repulsor efficiency at 72%, the AI reported, her voice still glitching occasionally. Weapon systems operational but ammunition depleted. Recommend avoiding prolonged engagement. Noted, Tony muttered. Let's hope this stays diplomatic. Beside him, Princess Leia adjusted her environment suit, her expression carved from stone. Tony had argued against her coming, but she'd overruled him with the kind of authority that reminded him uncomfortably of Pepper Potts. The Empire needs to see that the rebellion stands behind you, she'd said. And I need to see Vader's face when he realizes we're not afraid of him. Brave talk for someone whose planet was destroyed, Tony had replied. Her expression had gone cold. Which is exactly why I'm not afraid of him. He's already taken everything from me. What's left to fear? Now, as the transport touched down on the gray dust, Tony watched an Imperial Lambda-class shuttle descend 100 meters away. Sleek, angular, radiating menace even in its landing approach. The boarding ramp lowered with mechanical precision, and figures emerged into the airless void. First came stormtroopers, 8 of them moving in perfect formation, their white armor pristine against the gray landscape. Behind them, Admiral Graff in a sealed command suit, his Chagrian features visible through the transparasteel faceplate. And behind him, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," Tony breathed. Darth Vader emerged from the shuttle like something from a nightmare given form. Taller than any man had a right to be, encased in black armor that made Tony's Mark 50 look almost elegant by comparison. His cape somehow managed to flow despite the lack of atmosphere, and his helmet, that skull-like mask with its angular features and dark lenses, turned toward Tony with mechanical precision. The respirator breathing was audible even over the comms, a steady mechanical rhythm that spoke of life sustained by technology and willpower. Biosigns are weird, FRIDI reported. Elevated heart rate, damaged lungs, extensive cybernetic integration. Boss, that's more machine than man. He shouldn't be able to survive outside a medical facility. And yet here he is, Tony murmured, walking around, probably capable of ripping steel with his bare hands. Great. Leia touched his arm. Remember, don't show fear. He feeds on it. Fear? Please. I'm more concerned about the dramatic entrance. Very theatrical. I respect the commitment to the aesthetic. Tony activated his external speakers. Although I have to say, the cape in a vacuum is a neat trick. Hidden propulsion, micro-repulsors in the fabric. They met in the middle of the gray expanse. Two groups standing opposite each other like ancient armies preparing for parley. Vader's presence was overwhelming even without the Force, the sheer physical reality of him, the way stormtroopers unconsciously leaned away, the silence that followed him like a cloak. "You are the anomaly," Vader said, and his voice was like grinding metal wrapped in ice. Each word carried weight beyond mere sound. "The one who arrived in fire and impossible energy. What are you?" "Tony Stark, engineer, futurist, occasional savior of worlds. You must be the local villain." "Nice armor. I'm guessing that's military-grade durasteel. Could use some aesthetic refinement, but I respect the intimidation factor." Tony gestured casually despite the tension. "I'd shake hands, but I'm getting a vibe that you're more of a force choke first, ask questions later kind of guy." "Your levity masks fear," Vader observed. "I sense confusion in the Force around you, as if reality itself is uncertain of your existence." "That's because I'm not from your reality. Different universe, different rules. Think of me as an interdimensional tourist who took a wrong turn at Albuquerque." Tony's HUD was scanning Vader continuously, building a threat profile, extensive cybernetics, life support systems vulnerable to electromagnetic interference, limited mobility despite the imposing presence. "But you already knew that, didn't you? That's why you're here personally instead of sending your Imperial friends." "The Emperor takes great interest in anomalies," Admiral Graff interjected smoothly, "particularly those bearing unknown technology. You carry a power source unlike anything in our databases. We wish to understand it." "Understand it meaning take it apart and weaponize it?" Tony glanced at Leia, then back to Vader. "Here's the thing. I've heard this pitch before. Governments, corporations, alien warlords, all wanting access to arc reactor technology. It always ends the same way, badly. So I'm going to respectfully decline your invitation to become an Imperial science project." Vader took a step forward, and Tony felt something shift in the air. Not physical, but fundamental, as if the universe itself bent slightly around the Dark Lord. "You misunderstand your position. This is not a negotiation. You will surrender your technology and submit to Imperial authority, or you will be destroyed along with the rebels who harbor you." "There it is," Tony said, "the threat. I was wondering when we'd get there." His armor's weapon systems activated, targeting lasers painting invisible dots across the Imperial formation. "Here's my counteroffer. You back off, let the rebellion evacuate Yavin, and we all walk away without testing whether my repulsors can punch through stormtrooper armor. Spoiler alert, they can." "Mr. Stark," Leia said quietly over their private channel, "what are you doing?" "Establishing boundaries," Tony replied. "These people respond to strength. Time to show them I'm not just some lost refugee." Vader's head tilted slightly, and Tony's sensors screamed warnings. The Dark Lord raised one black-gloved hand, and suddenly Tony felt pressure. Not physical, but deeper. Something pressing against his thoughts, trying to pry open his mind like a locked door. "Fascinating," Vader said, and there was genuine curiosity beneath the mechanical voice. "Your mind is shielded, not by training or force discipline, but by something else. The technology in your armor protects more than your body." "Neural interface with active intrusion countermeasures," Tony grunted, fighting the sensation. FRI Day was working overtime, cycling through security protocols that had been designed to protect against alien mind control. "Also rude. We just met and you're already trying to root around in my brain? Whatever happened to personal boundaries?" The pressure intensified. Tony felt his arc reactor surge in response, power flooding through systems that weren't designed for this kind of defense. His HUD flickered, warning lights cascading across his vision. Vader was stronger than anything he'd encountered, not physically, but in this other realm. This force that Tony was beginning to understand was very, very real. Boss? Neural load approaching critical, FRIDBIS warned. I can't hold him out much longer. Tony made a decision. He triggered the EMP device Bisk had built to his specifications, localized and directional. Electromagnetic pulse washed over the Imperial formation, and suddenly stormtrooper armor locked up. Admiral Graf's suit froze, and even Vader's respirator stuttered for half a second. In that half second, Tony fired his repulsors. Not at Vader. That would be murder, and whatever else he was, Tony Stark didn't kill people who weren't actively trying to kill him. Instead, he targeted the ground between them, superheating lunar dust into a cloud of debris and ionized particles. Sensors on both sides went blind, communications scrambled. Chaos erupted in the gray wasteland. "Leia, run!" Tony shouted, grabbing her arm and engaging his flight systems. They rocketed toward the rebel transport, boots barely touching the ground as the armor's damaged repulsors strained under double weight. Behind them, the dust cloud cleared. Vader stood unmoved, his respirator breathing steady once more, his hand still raised. The EMP had bought seconds, nothing more. The stormtroopers were already rebooting, weapons coming online. "You cannot escape," Vader's voice boomed across the open channel, and Tony felt that pressure return, not in his mind now, but around his armor. The Mark 50's nanites screamed as invisible force began crushing the suit, compressing it like a tin can. "Your technology is impressive, but the force is absolute." Tony's HUD went red with warnings. Structural integrity failing, flight systems offline, power draining exponentially as the arc reactor struggled against impossible resistance. He crashed to the lunar surface 10 meters from the transport, Leia tumbling free of his grip. "Get to the ship," he gasped, but Vader was walking toward them now, each step deliberate, unstoppable. The stormtroopers fanned out, weapons raised. Admiral Graf watched from behind, his expression unreadable. Tony tried to stand, failed. The armor wouldn't respond. He was pinned by nothing but will and force, held down by a power his technology couldn't counter. Then a green blade ignited in the gray dust. Luke Skywalker stood between Tony and Vader, his father's lightsaber humming with deadly purpose. The young Jedi's face was set with determination that couldn't quite hide his terror. "Let him go," Luke said, his voice shaking only slightly. Vader stopped. For a long moment, he simply stared at Luke, and even through the mask, Tony could feel the Dark Lord's focus shift entirely. "You," Vader said, and something changed in his voice. Something almost human. "You were at the Death Star. You fired the shot." "I did," Luke confirmed, "and I'll fight you here if I have to." "You know not what you offer, young Jedi." Vader's hand lowered, and suddenly the pressure on Tony's armor released. He gasped, systems rebooting as Vader's full attention fixed on Luke. "But I find myself curious. Tell me your name." Luke hesitated, then lifted his chin. Luke Skywalker." The silence that followed was absolute. Even Vader's respirator seemed to pause. When he spoke again, his voice carried something Tony had never expected to hear. Shock. "Skywalker," Vader repeated. "Impossible." "My father's name, Luke said, "before you murdered him." Vader stood motionless, and Tony realized with sudden certainty that something fundamental had just shifted. This wasn't about technology anymore. This was personal in ways he couldn't begin to understand. "Skywalker," Vader said again, softer now, then louder to his troops. "Stand down. Let them leave." Admiral Graf stepped forward. "My lord, our orders are mine to give." Vader's hand clenched into a fist, and Graf's words choked off. Not killing him, but making the threat clear. The rebels may evacuate Yavin. The anomaly will be permitted to leave. For now. He turned back to Luke. And Tony swore he could feel the weight of destiny pressing down on all of them. "We will meet again, Luke Skywalker," Vader promised. "And when we do, you will learn the truth your mentors died to hide from you." Then he turned and walked back to his shuttle, cape flowing, stormtroopers falling into formation behind him. The Imperials departed, leaving Tony, Leia, and Luke standing in the gray dust of an airless moon, alive against all odds. "What?" Tony gasped as his armor systems slowly came back online. "The hell just happened?" Luke stared after Vader's departing shuttle, his face pale. "I don't know," he whispered, "but I think everything just changed." The rebel evacuation of Yavin 4 unfolded with the practiced efficiency of people who'd run from the Empire too many times to count. Transport ships lifted off in staggered waves, their hyperspace coordinates randomized to prevent pursuit tracking. X-wings and Y-wings flew escort patterns, sensors sweeping for Imperial ambush. Within 18 hours of Vader's inexplicable clemency, the base was empty except for ghosts, and the jungle slowly reclaiming ancient stone. Tony sat in the medical bay of the Redemption, a converted CR-90 Corvette that served as mobile headquarters for Alliance High Command, watching technicians catalog his armor's damage. The encounter with Vader had cost him. Nanite cohesion was down to 40%. Repulsor efficiency had dropped another 10 points. The arc reactor itself was stable. But the power distribution network showed stress fractures that would take weeks to repair properly. "You're lucky to be alive," Chief Engineer Bisk said, manipulating a holographic display of the armor's internal structure. "Whatever that Sith Lord did, it should have crushed this suit like a ration tin. The fact that it held at all speaks to extraordinary engineering." "The arc reactor's electromagnetic field created interference," Tony explained, though he wasn't entirely sure that was the whole truth. "Threw off his force grip just enough to prevent complete structural failure. But yeah, I got lucky. Very lucky." "Lucky," Leia said from the doorway, her tone making clear what she thought of that assessment. She dismissed the technicians with a gesture and waited until they'd left before continuing. "You provoked Darth Vader, used an EMP on an Imperial delegation, created an incident that should have gotten us all killed. And yet, here we are," Tony countered. "Your people evacuated safely. No Imperial pursuit. Mission accomplished. Because Luke Skywalker revealed himself to the most dangerous man in the galaxy." Leia's composure cracked slightly, showing the stress beneath. "Vader knows his name now, knows he exists. Do you understand what that means?" Tony was quiet for a moment, thinking back to that moment in the lunar dust. Vader's reaction to Luke's name, the shock that had penetrated even that mechanical voice. It means there's history there, personal history. Vader killed Luke's father. Anakin Skywalker, right? But the way Vader reacted, there's something more. "There's always something more with the Sith," Leia said bitterly. She moved to the viewport, staring out at the star field streaking past as they traveled through hyperspace. "The Force connects things in ways we don't understand, creates destinies and prophecies and patterns that trap people in cycles of violence." "You don't sound like a believer." "I believe the Force is real. I've seen what it can do. But I don't believe in destiny. I believe in choice." She turned back to face him. "You made a choice out there, Mr. Stark. You put yourself in danger to buy us time. Luke made a choice to save you, and Vader made a choice to let us go. Now we have to live with the consequences." Speaking of consequences, Tony said, pulling up a datapad, I've been analyzing the tactical situation. You've got maybe 2 weeks before the Empire triangulates your fleet's position. Your communication security is decent, but not perfect. Your ships are too slow for effective hit-and-run operations. And your biggest problem, you're fighting a reactive war instead of a proactive one. Leia raised an eyebrow. And you have solutions? I always have solutions. Question is whether you'll implement them. Tony swiped through screens displaying calculations and strategic models. First, communications. You're using encrypted channels, but Imperial intelligence has quantum decryption. You need a completely different approach. Analog dead drops, physical couriers, rotating one-time cipher pads. Old school, but it works. That would slow our response time significantly. Better slow than compromised. Second, ship modifications. Your transports are sitting ducks. I can design bolt-on armor plating using materials you already have. Not pretty, but it'll help ships survive long enough to jump to hyperspace. Third, and most important, you need to stop running and start hitting back. We destroyed the Death Star, Leia said sharply. That's not running. That was one victory. Huge, symbolic, devastating to Imperial morale, I'll give you that. But strategically, you removed one asset. The Empire has thousands of Star Destroyers, millions of stormtroopers, and a production capacity you can't match. Tony stood, ignoring the protest from his still-healing ribs. You need to change the game, target supply lines, recruit Imperial defectors, use propaganda to turn the galaxy against Palpatine. Make it politically and economically expensive for the Empire to maintain control. We're already doing all of that, Leia said, but there was uncertainty in her voice. Not well enough. Not fast enough. You're thinking like a military force trying to win battles. You need to think like a revolution trying to win hearts and minds. Tony pulled up a star chart highlighting key Imperial manufacturing worlds. Hit them where it hurts, not the military bases, the factories, the trade routes, the bureaucratic infrastructure that keeps the Empire functioning. Make it so expensive to be an Imperial loyalist that neutrality becomes attractive. Leia studied the map, her political mind clearly working through implications. That would require resources we don't have, coordination across dozens of cells. Intelligence gathering that I can help with, Tony interrupted. Look, I'm stuck in your galaxy, whether I like it or not. Might as well make myself useful. Give me access to your logistics data, your tactical reports, your supply manifests. Let me analyze everything with fresh eyes. I've run corporations, led teams, managed resources across planetary scales. This is just applied systems optimization. You make rebellion sound like a business venture. Everything's a business venture if you approach it right, even saving the galaxy. Tony smiled slightly. Besides, I owe you. You pulled me out of a crater, gave me a workshop, and didn't sell me out to the Empire when it would have been convenient. I pay my debts. Before Leia could respond, the ship's intercom crackled. Princess Organa to the bridge. We have a situation. They arrived to find Admiral Akbar studying a holographic display with his bulbous eyes narrowed in concern. The tactical screen showed their current position, deep space between major systems, and a red marker indicating an approaching vessel. Unknown ship, Akbar reported. Not Imperial configuration. Not any rebel vessel in our database. It's broadcasting an old separatist identification code, but those haven't been used since the Clone Wars. Could be a trap, General Dodonna said. The Empire could have repurposed old separatist vessels. Or it could be something else entirely, Tony said, moving closer to the display. His engineering eye analyzed the ship's profile. That's not a military design. Hull configuration suggests a modified freighter. Weapons are minimal, defensive only. If this is a trap, it's the most half-hearted trap I've ever seen. They're hailing us, the communications officer reported. Audio only, the signal's encrypted with, "Your Highness, this is an encryption key that only a handful of people should have. It's from Bail Organa's personal—" She stopped, realizing what she'd said. Leia's face went pale. Bail Organa, her adoptive father, dead when Alderaan was destroyed. "Put it through," she said quietly. The voice that emerged was filtered, mechanically altered, but distinctly feminine. "Rebel Corvette Redemption. This is an ally. I carry information vital to the Alliance. I know you have recently acquired an unusual asset, a man in advanced armor who fell from the sky. I wish to speak with him, and with Princess Leia Organa, if she survives." "This is Princess Organa," Leia said, her voice carefully controlled. "Identify yourself." A pause. Then, "My designation is Cipher 9, formerly of Imperial Intelligence. I'm defecting, Your Highness, and I'm bringing something you desperately need, the location of an Imperial project that will make the Death Star look like a mercy." The bridge went silent. Tony felt the weight of decisions settling over everyone present. A defector, using Bail Organa's personal codes, claiming to have vital intelligence. It screamed trap, but it also screamed opportunity. "This is insane," Dodonna muttered. "We can't trust an Imperial intelligence operative." "We can't afford not to listen," Leia countered. "If there's another superweapon—" "There's always another superweapon," Tony interrupted. "That's how authoritarian regimes work. Fear through superior firepower. The question is whether this Cipher 9 is legitimate or bait in an elaborate net." "I can answer that," came Luke's voice. He entered the bridge, his expression distant, as if seeing something beyond normal vision. "I can sense her, through the Force. She's conflicted, afraid, but not lying. Whatever she's carrying, she believes it's important enough to risk her life." "The Force tells you this?" Tony asked skeptically. "The Force doesn't lie, people do. But I can feel the difference." Luke looked at Leia. "We should at least hear what she has to say." Leia closed her eyes briefly, weighing the risks. Then she nodded. "Bring her aboard, full security escort. She gets scanned for trackers, weapons, explosives, everything. And Mr. Stark—" "I'll join the welcoming committee," Tony said. "My sensors might pick up things your security misses. Plus, I'm curious about someone who uses Bail Organa's codes." "Those codes shouldn't exist," Leia said softly. "My father destroyed them when Alderaan fell under suspicion. The only way someone could have them is if they were taken directly from his personal files before the planet was destroyed. Or if your father gave them to someone he trusted," Tony suggested. "A backup plan. Insurance against the worst-case scenario." Leia's expression showed she hadn't considered that possibility. Hope warred with suspicion in her eyes. "Let's find out." 20 minutes later, a figure in nondescript gray clothing stepped through the airlock, hands raised, submitting to security scans without resistance. She was human, mid-30s, with sharp features and eyes that constantly assessed her surroundings. Everything about her posture screamed professional intelligence operative, controlled, aware, dangerous, despite appearing unarmed. The scans came back clean. No weapons, no explosives, no Imperial tracking devices. Just a woman and a sealed data cylinder clutched in one hand. "Cipher 9, Leia said formally. "You understand that using my father's codes doesn't grant you automatic trust." "I understand." The woman's voice, no longer filtered, carried a Coruscanti accent. "Bail Organa gave me those codes 3 months before Alderaan's destruction. He suspected what was coming." He asked me to use them only if the situation became desperate enough to warrant trusting a rebel cell with Imperial secrets. And why would an Imperial intelligence officer help my father? Because I was his agent, Your Highness, a sleeper operative inside Imperial intelligence for the past 8 years. And because the project I've discovered isn't just a threat to the rebellion, it's a threat to every living being in the galaxy. She held out the data cylinder. Leia took it carefully, as if it might explode. "What's on this?" Leia asked. "Blueprints, personnel manifests, project timelines." Cypher 9's expression was grim. The Empire is building something worse than the Death Star, something that doesn't just destroy planets, it destroys the Force itself. And the man leading the project is using technology that shouldn't exist in our galaxy. Technology that matches the energy signature of your new arrival. Every eye turned to Tony. "Well," he said into the sudden silence, "that's concerning." The data cylinder's contents painted a nightmare in cold, bureaucratic detail. Tony stood in the Redemption's briefing room, studying holographic schematics that seemed to mock everything he understood about responsible technology. Around him, the Alliance leadership sat in stunned silence as Cypher 9 walked them through Project Nullify. "The concept is simple," the defector explained, manipulating the hologram to show a spherical device the size of a star destroyer. An amplification matrix that generates a resonance wave calibrated to disrupt midi-chlorian bonds at the molecular level. In layman's terms, a weapon that severs living beings from the Force permanently. "That's impossible," Luke said, his voice hollow. "The Force is life itself. You can't just turn it off." Imperial scientists thought so too, until 6 months ago, when an archaeological team on Malachor 5 discovered ancient Sith technology that did exactly that, on a limited scale. The Empire has been reverse engineering it ever since. Cypher 9 pulled up personnel files. The lead scientist is Grand Moff Various, a protege of Tarkin. He's obsessed with eliminating what he calls Force dependence from Imperial military doctrine. Tony circled the hologram, his analytical mind dissecting the design. This is brute force engineering, elegant in its simplicity, horrifying in its implications. You're basically creating an anti-force field generator. Broadcast range? Planetary scale in current iteration, but the project goal is galactic coverage within 5 years. "Jesus," Tony muttered. "That's not a weapon, that's genocide with extra steps." "It's worse than that," Leia said quietly, and then she stood at the viewport, her reflection ghostly against the stars. "If the Empire can neutralize the Force, they eliminate the one advantage Force sensitives have. No more Jedi survivors. No more potential threats to Imperial rule. They complete what Order 66 started." "And Darth Vader?" General Dodonna asked. "Does he know about this project?" Cypher 9 hesitated. "According to my intelligence, no. Grand Moff Various reports directly to the Emperor. Vader's been deliberately kept out of the loop. Palpatine apparently sees this as insurance against all Force users, including his own apprentice." Tony saw Luke's expression darken. The kid was processing betrayal on multiple levels, the Empire's willingness to destroy something fundamental to the galaxy, and the Emperor's willingness to betray even Vader for the sake of absolute control. "You said the technology matches Tony's energy signature," Admiral Akbar said, his gravelly voice breaking the heavy silence. "Explain." "The amplification matrix uses a power source unlike anything in Imperial databases. Clean energy generation at impossible efficiency levels. When I saw the energy readings from the anomaly at Yavin," Cypher 9 looked directly at Tony. "They match the power signature in these schematics perfectly. Either someone in the Empire has technology from your universe, or you're somehow connected to this project." "I've never heard of Project Nullify," Tony said flatly. "I've been in your galaxy for less than a week. There's no way I'm involved." "Unless," Bisk said slowly, his Duros features thoughtful. "The connection is indirect. Your arc reactor technology operates on principles outside our standard physics. What if Imperial scientists detected those same principles elsewhere? In ancient technology, perhaps? Or in artifacts left behind by travelers like you?" Tony felt cold understanding creep down his spine. "You're saying I'm not the first interdimensional visitor to your galaxy?" "The Force has existed for millennia," Luke said. "There are legends of beings who came from beyond the known galaxy. Ancient Jedi texts mention void walkers, entities who existed outside the Force's reach. Most scholars thought they were metaphorical. Maybe they weren't," Tony said. He pulled up his armor's diagnostics, comparing the arc reactor's energy signature to the schematics from Project Nullify. The patterns weren't identical, but they shared fundamental characteristics: clean fusion, zero-point energy manipulation, quantum-level power generation. Okay, this is bad. If the Empire has access to technology that operates like mine, even partially reverse-engineered, they could build functional arc reactor analogs, power sources that don't rely on conventional resources. "Which means unlimited energy for the Empire," Leia said. "No more dependence on Tabana gas or fusion reactors. They could build fleets faster, power weapons larger, expand their infrastructure beyond anything we could counter. And that's before we even address the Force nullification aspect," Dodonna added grimly. "If this weapon becomes operational, the Rebellion loses any potential advantage from Force-sensitive operatives. We're already outgunned and outnumbered. Take away the Force, and we have nothing." Tony studied the schematic's construction timeline. 3 months until the amplification matrix reached prototype stage. 6 months until field testing. A year until full deployment. Unless they acted fast, Project Nullify would become operational, and the galaxy would fundamentally change. "Where is this facility?" he asked. Cipher 9 highlighted a system in the outer rim. "Research Station Epsilon, in orbit around the planet Rune. Heavy Imperial presence. At least 2 Star Destroyers providing security at all times. The station itself is state-of-the-art. Shield generators, automated defenses, redundant life support. It's designed to survive a siege." "We can't assault it," Akbar said immediately. "We don't have the firepower to overcome 2 Star Destroyers and a fortified station. It would be suicide." "We don't need to assault it," Tony said, his mind already racing through possibilities. "We need to sabotage it. Get inside, plant explosives, destroy the research and the prototype. Classic infiltration op." "With respect, Mr. Stark, this isn't a holodrama," General Dodonna said. "Imperial security on a project this classified will be impenetrable. Biometric scans, clearance codes that change daily, automated systems designed to detect intruders. Even if we could get someone inside—" "You already have someone who can get inside," Cipher 9 interrupted. "Me. I still have my Imperial credentials. My cover hasn't been blown. I can access Research Station Epsilon under the pretense of conducting a security audit." "They'll kill you the moment they suspect," Leia said. "Probably. But I didn't defect to live a long, comfortable life, Your Highness. I defected because I saw Alderaan burn. 2 billion people murdered to make a political point." Cipher 9's voice was steady, but her hands clenched into fists. "If I can prevent another atrocity, even if it costs my life, then at least my years inside Imperial intelligence won't have been wasted." Tony looked at the woman. This spy who'd spent 8 years in enemy territory, feeding intelligence to a rebellion that might not survive to use it. There was something familiar in her determination. He'd known operatives like her. Natasha Romanoff, Nick Fury. People who understood that some missions required you to become what you hated, to fight what you feared. "You won't be going alone," he said. Everyone turned to look at him. The armor's damaged, but it's functional. More importantly, it's undetectable by Imperial sensors because it operates on principles they don't understand. I can infiltrate the station with you, provide technical expertise, additional firepower, and a really good distraction if things go sideways. "Absolutely not," Leia said immediately. "You're too valuable. The Empire already wants you. If they capture you, they won't, because I'm really good at not getting captured." Tony pulled up the station's technical specifications. "Look, you need someone who understands advanced technology, someone who can recognize arc reactor analogs and properly sabotage them, someone who's broken into more secure facilities than I can count. That's me. I'm literally the only person here qualified for this." "He's right," Bisk said reluctantly. "The technical aspects alone require expertise we don't have. If the Empire has adapted his technology, Mr. Stark is the best person to identify and neutralize it." "I'm coming too," Luke said suddenly. "No," Tony and Leia said simultaneously. "Vader knows who I am now," Luke continued, his voice gaining strength. "He's going to be hunting me anyway. And if this weapon can destroy the Force, I need to understand it, need to know if there's a way to counter it." He looked at Tony. "You said you wanted to understand how the Force and technology intersect. This is how. Let me help." Tony wanted to refuse. The kid was barely trained, running on instinct and raw talent. But he remembered being 22, desperate to prove himself, convinced he could solve any problem if given the chance. And there was something else. Luke's presence in the Force might provide cover, might confuse sensors designed to detect conventional threats. "Fine," he said, "but you follow my lead. This is an infiltration mission, not a heroic assault. We get in, plant charges, get out. No unnecessary risks, no dramatic gestures. Agreed?" Luke nodded. Leia looked like she wanted to argue further, but recognized futility when she saw it. "This is insane," she said finally. "You're talking about infiltrating one of the most secure facilities in the Empire with a defector, an untrained Jedi, and a man in experimental armor from another universe." "I know," Tony said. "It's either really brave or really stupid. I've done both enough times that I've stopped being able to tell the difference." He extended his hand to Cypher 9. "So, Agent, ready to commit some high-quality sabotage?" She shook his hand firmly. "I've been ready since Alderaan died." "Good. Then let's save the galaxy. Again." Tony looked at the assembled Alliance leadership. "You've got 3 days to get us to Rune undetected. We'll need a small ship, something fast enough to run if discovered, small enough to hide in the traffic around an Imperial research station. And I'll need unrestricted access to your fabrication facilities. I've got some toys to build." As the meeting dispersed and plans began to form, Tony caught Leia's eye. She held his gaze for a long moment, and he saw the weight of command there, the impossible burden of sending people into danger, knowing some wouldn't return. "Bring him back," she said quietly, and Tony knew she meant Luke. "Whatever happens to you or Cypher 9, bring Luke back. He's the future of the Jedi Order. Maybe the future of the rebellion itself." "I'll do my best," Tony promised. "But Princess, you should know, I'm really good at surviving impossible situations. It's kind of my thing." She smiled slightly. "Then may the Force be with you, Tony Stark." "Thanks. Though between you and me, I'm putting my faith in good engineering and better planning." He tapped his arc reactor. "But hey, I'll take all the cosmic help I can get." In the dark reaches of space on Research Station Epsilon, Grand Moff Various reviewed the latest test results with satisfaction. The amplification matrix was ahead of schedule. Soon they would field test it on a remote world, some insignificant planet full of force-sensitive primitives who wouldn't be missed. And then the Emperor's vision would be complete, a galaxy ruled not by mystic nonsense, but by technology, order, and absolute Imperial authority. He didn't notice the anomalous energy signature his sensors had detected 3 days prior. Didn't realize that the universe was about to send him something he couldn't predict, couldn't prepare for, and couldn't control. Tony Stark was coming, and he was going to break everything. The approach to Rune was a lesson in controlled paranoia. Tony sat in the cockpit of the Shadow's Edge, a battered YT-2400 freighter that looked like it had survived 3 civil wars and a bad spy steal, watching Imperial patrol routes through a sensor display that flickered more than it should. Cypher 9 piloted with the kind of calm precision that spoke of countless smuggling runs and narrow escapes. Luke occupied the gunner's seat, his lightsaber clipped to his belt, his presence in the Force carefully suppressed. 2 TIE patrols in Sector 7, Cypher 9 reported, adjusting their trajectory with minute precision. Standard sweep pattern. We'll enter the shipping lane between rotations. Once we're in legitimate traffic, we're just another cargo hauler delivering supplies. And if they scan us, Tony asked, they will. But our transponder codes are genuine, stolen from a legitimate freight company that does regular runs to Research Station Epsilon. As long as we maintain proper formation and don't do anything suspicious, we're invisible. She glanced at him. That means no armor until we're aboard the station. Tony looked down at his civilian clothes, nondescript gray coveralls that Rebel Supply had scrounged up. The Mark 50 was compressed into a briefcase-sized container, nanites in hibernation mode. Without the armor, he felt naked, vulnerable, human. I don't like being this exposed, he muttered. Welcome to how the rest of us live every day, Cypher 9 said dryly. The trick is to not look like you're worried. Imperial security looks for nervousness, for people who don't belong. You have to convince yourself you have every right to be here. They slipped into the commercial traffic lane, surrounded by cargo haulers, supply ships, and the occasional passenger transport. Research Station Epsilon hung in orbit like a mechanical moon, a massive cylindrical structure bristling with communication arrays, docking ports, and enough weapons to defend against a small fleet. 2 Imperial Star Destroyers flanked it, their gray hulls catching Rune's amber sunlight. That's a lot of firepower for a research facility, Luke observed. They're not just protecting the research, Tony said, studying the station's architecture through the viewport. They're protecting something else. Look at the power distribution. Those energy readings are way too high for standard operations. Whatever they're building in there, it requires massive amounts of power. The amplification matrix, Cypher 9 confirmed. According to my intelligence, it's in the central research sector. Heavily shielded, redundant security systems, limited personnel access. We'll need to get through at least 3 security checkpoints to reach it. And you're confident your credentials will hold up, or? Confident isn't the word I'd use, but they should work for initial access. She keyed in their docking request, her voice shifting to professional bureaucrat mode. Freighter Shadow's Edge requesting docking clearance. Manifest shows standard supply delivery, authorization code Gamma 77 Delta. The response came back almost immediately, crisp and mechanical. Freighter Shadow's Edge, you are cleared for docking bay 12. Proceed to approach vector and maintain standard protocol. Welcome to Research Station Epsilon. Too easy, Luke muttered. Not easy, Cypher 9 corrected. Expected. They see hundreds of supply ships weekly. We're just another transaction in a logistics chain. But her hands were tight on the controls, and Tony noticed the way her jaw clenched. She was as nervous as the rest of them, just better at hiding it. The docking procedure was mechanical, automated arms guiding them into the bay with hydraulic precision. Through the viewport, Tony saw the controlled chaos of an Imperial facility at work. Stormtroopers on patrol, technicians in gray jumpsuits, officers in crisp uniforms reviewing datapads. Everything orderly, everything monitored. Everything exactly the kind of place that would notice 3 infiltrators if they made one wrong move. They passed through the first checkpoint without incident. Cypher 9 presented her credentials, Imperial Intelligence Inspector conducting routine security audit, and the board security officer barely glanced at the documentation before waving them through. Tony and Luke posed as her technical assistants, carrying equipment cases that held concealed explosives alongside legitimate scanning gear. "Act like you belong here," Cypher 9 murmured as they walked deeper into the station. "Don't look around too much. Don't make eye contact unless spoken to. Radiate bureaucratic competence and mild irritation at being assigned this duty." Tony found it surprisingly easy to slip into the role. He'd spent years navigating corporate environments, military facilities, government installations. The Empire was just another bureaucracy, more authoritarian, more willing to kill, but fundamentally the same in its love of procedure and paperwork. The second checkpoint was more thorough. A scan for weapons, a verification of their biometric data against Imperial databases. Tony held his breath as the scanner passed over him, hoping that his biology registered as standard human baseline. The arc reactor in his chest was hidden beneath specialized shielding Bisk had fabricated, but if they looked too closely— "Clear," the security tech announced. "Inspector, your audit is scheduled for Research Wing Delta. You'll need Level 6 clearance for anything beyond basic facility inspection." "Understood," Cypher 9 replied coolly. "We're here to assess structural integrity and power systems. Standard post-construction review. Admiral Varias is expecting my report by week's end." The mention of the Grand Moff's name did the trick. The security tech straightened slightly, suddenly more deferential. "Of course, Inspector. I'll note your arrival in the log. Do you require an escort?" "That won't be necessary. I prefer to conduct audits without supervision. It ensures more candid findings." They were waved through, and Tony felt the tension ease slightly. 2 checkpoints down, one more before they reached the central research sector where Project Nullify's heartbeat in contained fury. The station's interior was sterile, functional. White walls, harsh lighting, the constant hum of ventilation systems and computer banks. They passed laboratories where technicians in clean suits worked behind transparent steel barriers. Testing chambers where machinery Tony couldn't identify spun and hummed with ominous purpose. Everything here was dedicated to one goal: understanding and weaponizing the Force's destruction. "I can feel it," Luke whispered as they walked. "Something wrong in the Force, like a wound. It's coming from deeper in the station." "The amplification matrix," Tony said. "If it's designed to disrupt Force connections, it probably broadcasts low-level interference even when inactive. Can you handle it?" "I'll manage." But Luke's face was pale, his hand unconsciously moving to his lightsaber. The third checkpoint was different. Instead of board security personnel, they faced an Imperial officer, a woman with sharp eyes and lieutenant's insignia who studied Cypher 9's credentials with uncomfortable intensity. "Inspector Draven," the lieutenant said, reading the false name from the datapad. "Your credentials are in order, but I'm showing no advance notice of this audit in our system. Grand Moff Varias prefers to be informed of inspections personally." Cypher 9 didn't hesitate. "Which is precisely why this audit was authorized directly by Imperial Security Bureau. The Grand Moff's awareness, or lack thereof, is part of the assessment." We're evaluating whether this facility maintains proper protocol compliance even without advance warning. The lieutenant's eyes narrowed. I'll need to verify this with my superior officer. By all means, contact Admiral Eulerin at ISB headquarters. Authorization code Theta 9 Black. Cipher 9 rattled off the code with bored confidence. Though I should warn you, the Admiral doesn't appreciate having his time wasted with routine confirmations. He tends to note such inquiries in personnel files. It was a beautiful bluff, invoking a high-ranking ISB official, implying career consequences for being too thorough, presenting bureaucratic confidence that suggested she'd done this 100 times. The lieutenant hesitated, caught between protocol and self-preservation. That won't be necessary, she said finally, though suspicion lingered in her voice. Proceed to research Wing Delta, but be advised, Grand Moff Varius is currently on station. If he requests a briefing on your findings, you will comply immediately. Understood. They moved past the checkpoint and Tony felt sweat cooling on his back. That had been too close. One more suspicious question, one call to verify the authorization code, and they would have been exposed. Varius is here, Luke said quietly. That's not good. Actually, it might be, Tony countered. If he's on station, he's not calling in reinforcements. And if we're lucky, we can hit the facility while he's distracted with whatever brought him here. They reached Research Wing Delta 15 minutes later, and Tony felt his breath catch. Through reinforced transparisteel windows, he saw it, the amplification matrix, a spherical device 10 meters in diameter, suspended in a containment field that crackled with barely contained energy. Its surface was covered in geometric patterns that reminded Tony uncomfortably of Chitauri technology, of Thanos' ships, of artifacts that operated on principles human minds weren't meant to fully comprehend. And at its heart, pulsing with familiar blue-white light, was an arc reactor. Not his design exactly, cruder, less efficient, but unmistakably based on the same principles. Zero-point energy manipulation, quantum-level fusion, electromagnetic field generation. Someone had reverse-engineered his technology and weaponized it into something monstrous. "Oh no," Tony whispered. "Oh no, no, no." "What is it?" Cipher 9 asked. "That's not ancient Sith technology, or if it is, someone combined it with principles from my universe." Tony pressed closer to the window, his engineer's eye cataloging every detail. The power generation system, the field containment, that's arc reactor architecture. Someone found a way to make my clean energy design broadcast force nullification waves. I did this. I built the foundation for this weapon. "You didn't know," Luke said. "Doesn't matter. Intent is irrelevant. Outcome is everything." Tony's jaw clenched. "I've spent years trying to prevent my technology from being weaponized. Spent years cleaning up the mess Stark Industries made selling weapons to the highest bidder. And here I am in a different universe, and somehow my tech is still being used to hurt people." "Then we destroy it," Cipher 9 said simply. "We plant the charges, we blow this station to atoms, and we make sure no one can rebuild it." Tony nodded slowly, forcing emotion down, letting tactical thinking take over. "We need to get inside that chamber, plant charges not just on the matrix itself, but on the power distribution network. If we can cause a cascade failure in the containment field while the device is active, it'll create an energy release that'll vaporize half the station. And us. If we're not clear in time," Luke pointed out, "then we move fast." Tony opened his equipment case, revealing not just scanning tools but also breaching charges, electromagnetic disruptors, and the compressed Mark 50 armor. "Cipher 9, how long until the next security patrol?" She checked her chronometer. 15 minutes. Maybe 20 if we're lucky. That'll have to be enough. Tony began assembling breaching equipment with practiced speed. Luke, I need you to sense if anyone's approaching. Use that force awareness to give us advance warning. Cypher 9, you're on lookout. I'm going inside to plant charges and... A voice behind them, cold and authoritative, cut through his planning. I'm afraid I can't allow that, Inspector Draven. Or should I say, Rebel Agent. They turned as one to find Grand Moff Varius standing in the corridor, flanked by 6 stormtroopers with weapons raised. The Grand Moff was tall, angular, with the kind of face that suggested a lifetime of believing rules existed for other people. His uniform was immaculate, his eyes intelligent and utterly merciless. Your credentials were excellent, Varius continued, walking closer with measured steps. Your authorization codes checked out. Your entire cover was perfect, which is precisely what made it suspicious. No one from ISB is that thorough and certainly no one from ISB brings 2 assistants who move like soldiers pretending to be technicians. Cypher 9's hand moved toward her concealed blaster, but 6 rifles tracking her stopped the motion. Don't, Varius said. You're already dead. The only question is whether I kill you quickly or slowly. And that depends on how cooperative you are. His eyes fixed on Tony. Particularly you. The energy signature you're carrying matches our power source exactly, which means you're either the source of the technology we've been reverse engineering, or you know who is. Either way, you're far too valuable to kill immediately. Tony met the Grand Moff's gaze steadily, his mind racing through options and finding none that didn't end in capture or death. The armor was still compressed. Luke's lightsaber would take seconds to activate, too slow. Cypher 9 was outgunned. They were trapped. So here's what's going to happen, Varius said with the confidence of absolute power. You're going to tell me everything about this technology, where it comes from, how it works, and how we can improve it. And in exchange, I'll let your rebel friends die quickly when I destroy their fleet. Refuse and I'll make you watch while we test the amplification matrix on them, while we sever them from the Force one by one and record their screaming for the Emperor's review. He smiled. It was the smile of a man who'd won, who held all the cards, who couldn't imagine a scenario where he lost. Tony smiled back. You know what your problem is, Tony said. You've never met someone who's really good at improvising. He triggered the arc reactor. The arc reactor's electromagnetic pulse wasn't designed for offensive use. It was a power source, not a weapon. But Tony had spent 3 days in hyperspace modifying it, pushing its output beyond safe parameters, turning his life support system into something that could do what he needed in a crisis. It released everything at once. The blast of electromagnetic energy washed over the corridor like an invisible tsunami. Stormtrooper armor locked up, servos freezing, HUD displays going dark. Their weapons sparked and died. The overhead lights exploded in cascades of sparks. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. And Grand Moff Varius's datapad erupted in flames, forcing him to drop it with a curse. In the 3 seconds of chaos, Tony opened the briefcase. The Mark 50's nanites exploded outward like liquid metal given life to... Flowing over his body with snake-quick speed. The armor assembled in under 2 seconds, not fully, not perfectly, but enough. Repulsors ignited, HUD flickered to life. Weapon systems came online at 60% capacity. "Run!" Tony shouted. Luke's lightsaber ignited, the green blade casting dancing shadows in the emergency lighting. He moved with force-enhanced speed, deflecting the wild blaster shots from stormtroopers, trying to reboot frozen systems. Cypher 9 drew her concealed blaster and fired twice, dropping a trooper whose armor had restored faster than the others. Tony fired repulsor blasts at the transparasteel window. Once, twice. The third shot shattered it, and he grabbed Luke and Cypher 9, his armor's enhanced strength, letting him haul both of them through the opening into the amplification matrix chamber. Alarms screamed, red lights strobed, automated defenses activated throughout Research Wing Delta. Behind them, Grand Moff Varius was shouting orders, his voice cutting through the chaos with the authority of someone who'd commanded through disasters before. "Seal the research wing. Lock down all exits. I want security teams converging on Research Delta immediately, and someone get those blast doors closed before they reach the..." Luke slashed through the door controls with his lightsaber. Molten metal sprayed, and the blast door slammed shut, sealing them inside the chamber with the amplification matrix. Buying them time, not much, but enough. Tony stood in the heart of Project Nullify, staring at the monstrous device that pulsed with stolen technology. Up close, it was even worse than he'd feared. The arc reactor analog at its core was crude, unstable, bleeding radiation that his suit's sensors flagged as dangerous, even through the containment field. Someone had taken his clean energy design and corrupted it, forced it to serve purposes it was never meant for. FREIDI. Analysis, he said. Power core is a derivative of ARC technology, the damaged AI reported, her voice glitching worse than ever. Quantum signature matches your, but implementation is extremely unstable. Boss, if that thing, full power, it could entire sector. I got enough of that. Can we shut it down? Not without codes, but we can overload. Plant charges on, distribution network, force, containment failure. Energy release will destroy the station. Yeah, I figured. Tony pulled explosive charges from his armor's storage, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. Luke, I need you to buy me time. However long it takes security to cut through that door, I need longer. I'll hold them, Luke said, his young face set with determination that made him look older than his years. He positioned himself at the sealed blast doors, lightsaber ready, drawing on the force to steady his breathing. Cypher 9 moved to the chamber's secondary entrance, her blaster trained on the door. I've got the service corridor. But Stark, we need an exit plan. Once you blow this thing, we'll have minutes before the entire station goes critical. Working on it. Tony flew up to the amplification matrix's power distribution node, his armor's cutting laser igniting. He began slicing through protective plating, exposing the vulnerable energy conduits beneath. How fast can this freighter of yours move? Fast enough if we can reach it, but we're 6 decks away from the docking bay, and every stormtrooper on this station is about to be between us and our ship. Then we improvise. It's kind of my specialty. The blast doors began to glow red as Imperial cutting torches attacked from the other side. Luke watched with force-enhanced perception, counting seconds. They had maybe 2 minutes before security breached. Maybe less. Tony, Luke called up, whatever you're doing, do it faster. Helpful advice. So glad you're here. Tony placed the first charge against the power conduit, arming it with a timer set for 5 minutes. Then he moved to the next node, then the next, working his way around the amplification matrix in a pattern designed to create cascading failures. Each charge was precisely placed, calculated to cause maximum damage to the power distribution network, while avoiding immediate detonation. Behind him, the chamber's secondary entrance exploded inward. Stormtroopers poured through the service corridor, blasters firing. Cypher 9 returned fire with cold precision, dropping 2 before diving behind a control console for cover. "Contact!" she shouted. "Multiple hostiles, service corridor." Luke moved to support her, his lightsaber deflecting blaster bolts back at their sources. The Force guided his movements, turning defense into counterattack. A trooper fell, then another, but more kept coming. Too many. Always too many. "Tony!" Luke yelled. "Almost done!" Tony placed the final charge against the arc reactor analog itself. This one was special, a shaped explosive designed to penetrate the containment field and detonate the corrupted power core. When it blew, it would trigger a reaction that would tear through the station's power grid like a virus, overloading systems, causing failures that would cascade through every deck. It would also vaporize everything within a kilometer radius. "Charges set. 5-minute countdown starting. Now!" Tony dropped from the amplification matrix, his repulsors flaring as he landed beside Luke. "We need to move." The main blast doors finally gave way, melting through under concentrated cutting. They fell inward with a crash, and Grand Moff Varius strode through, flanked by 24 stormtroopers and what looked like Imperial sentry droids, massive bipedal machines with heavy weapons and armor that could take sustained fire. "You've destroyed months of research," Varias said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Damaged equipment that cannot be replaced, sabotaged a project vital to Imperial security. Do you have any idea what the Emperor will do to you for this?" "Hopefully nothing, since I plan to be very far away when he finds out." Tony raised his repulsors, targeting the sentry droids. "But hey, Grand Moff, before we do this, quick question. Where did you get the arc reactor design? Because I'm really curious how my technology ended up in your murderous science project." Varius smiled coldly. "Malachor Phi. The Sith left more than just superweapons on that world. They left fragments, technology that predates the Republic, artifacts from beings who traveled between realities." His eyes gleamed with fanatic certainty. "The Empire doesn't just study the Force, Mr. Stark. We study everything, including visitors from beyond our universe who thought they could hide from Imperial scrutiny." "You found someone else," Tony said, understanding dawning. "Another interdimensional traveler. That's how you got the arc reactor principles." "Found? No. We captured them. Or rather, what remained of them after centuries in stasis. Their technology was instructive." Varius gestured, and the stormtroopers raised their weapons. "And now we'll add your technology to our collection. Fire." Tony, Luke, and Cypher 9 moved as one. Repulsor blasts met blaster fire. Luke's lightsaber became a green blur of deflection. Cypher 9's precise shooting dropped troopers with brutal efficiency. But they were outnumbered 20-3, fighting in a chamber with limited cover, facing professional soldiers and automated war machines. A sentry droid's cannon locked onto Tony. He rolled left, but the blast clipped his shoulder, and his armor's right repulsor went offline. Warning lights cascaded across his HUD. Structural integrity at 50%, power reserves depleting rapidly. The armor was dying around him, piece by piece. 4 minutes until detonation, FRI Day announced helpfully. "I can do basic math, thanks." Tony fired his unibeam at the sentry droid, the concentrated energy blast punching through its armor and core. It collapsed in a heap of sparking machinery, but 2 more stepped forward to take its place. Luke was everywhere at once, his connection to the Force allowing him to move faster than human reflexes should permit. He deflected blaster bolts, redirected them back at stormtroopers, used the Force to hurl debris at the sentry droids. But even he couldn't maintain that pace indefinitely. Tony saw him stumble, saw a blaster bolt graze his arm, saw the pain flash across his face even as he kept fighting. "We can't hold them," Cypher 9 shouted. She'd taken cover behind the amplification matrix itself, using its bulk as protection, but her blaster's power cell was nearly depleted. "If we don't retreat now, we're dead." "Retreating is also dead," Tony shot back. "We're trapped in a sealed chamber with no exit except through about 50 heavily armed Imperials. Our options are really limited." That's when he saw it. The amplification matrix's containment field was flickering. Not failing, not yet, but unstable. The explosive charges he'd planted were already affecting the power distribution, causing fluctuations that the system was struggling to compensate for. And if the field was unstable— "Luke!" Tony shouted. "The containment field! Can you manipulate it with the Force?" "I don't." "Maybe. I've never tried." "Try now. Reach out with the Force. Feel the energy matrix. Destabilize it." Luke closed his eyes for just a moment, reaching out with senses beyond sight. Tony felt the air change, felt reality bend slightly as the young Jedi connected with the amplification matrix, this device designed to destroy the Force itself. It was like watching someone grab a live wire, dangerous and desperate and potentially catastrophic. The containment field flickered, wavered, then collapsed entirely. Raw energy exploded outward from the arc reactor analog, a shockwave of uncontained power that threw everyone in the chamber off their feet. Stormtroopers flew backward, sentry droids sparked and died. Grand Moff Various slammed into a bulkhead hard enough to crack his skull against metal, and Tony, Luke, and Cypher 9 were thrown toward the far wall, where Tony fired his remaining repulsor at full power, not at the enemy, but at the wall itself. The blast punched through already weakened bulkhead plating, explosive decompression, creating a hole into the corridor beyond. Emergency bulkheads started to seal, but Tony grabbed Luke and Cypher 9 and flew, his damaged armor straining under triple weight, repulsors screaming in protest as they shot through the opening with less than a second to spare. They tumbled into the corridor beyond as the emergency bulkhead slammed shut, sealing the amplification matrix chamber and everyone still inside it. 3 minutes, FRIDY gasped. "Docking bay!" Tony set Luke and Cypher 9 down, his armor barely holding together. "Run! My repulsors are offline, so we're doing this on foot." They ran through corridors filled with flashing red emergency lights and blaring alarms, ran past confused technicians and security teams mobilizing too slowly, ran as the station began to shake around them, the planted charges starting their deadly work, power systems beginning their cascade failures. 2 minutes. They reached a vertical maintenance shaft. Luke cut through the access panel with his lightsaber, and they climbed. Tony using his armor's enhanced strength, Luke using Force-assisted jumps, Cypher 9 climbing with the determined efficiency of someone who'd escaped worse situations. 1 minute, 30 seconds. The docking bay was chaos. Ships were evacuating, pilots scrambling for their vessels as the station's death became obvious. The Shadow's Edge sat where they'd left it, boarding ramp extended, engines already warming up because Cypher 9 had set automatic pre-launch protocols. 1 minute. They ran across the docking bay floor, blaster fire chasing them from security teams finally catching up. Tony's armor took hits meant for Luke. Cypher 9 returned fire over her shoulder. They reached the ramp, stumbled aboard. 30 seconds. Cypher 9 threw herself into the pilot's seat, hands flying over controls. The engines roared to life. Docking clamps released. The freighter lurched upward, scraping the bay ceiling as she put full power to thrust, not bothering with niceties like smooth takeoffs or traffic protocols. 15 seconds. The Shadow's Edge shot out of the docking bay just as Research Station Epsilon began to die. The explosive charges detonated in perfect sequence, each one triggering the next, creating a wave of destruction that ripped through power distribution networks, overloaded generators, caused containment fields to collapse throughout the massive structure. 5 seconds. the corrupted arc reactor went critical. The explosion was beautiful and terrible, a sphere of white-hot energy that expanded outward from the station's core, vaporizing metal, atomizing everything within its radius. The two star destroyers nearby raised shields desperately, but the energy wave was too powerful, too sudden. They were caught in the blast, hulls buckling, systems failing. Research Station Epsilon ceased to exist as a coherent structure. It became expanding debris, a cloud of superheated metal and vaporized equipment spreading across Rune's orbit like a technological supernova. Inside the Shadow's Edge, Tony, Luke, and Cypher 9 watched through the viewport as the station died, taking with it Project Nullify, Grand Moff Varias, and the Empire's dream of weaponized force destruction. "We did it," Luke breathed. "We survived," Cypher 9 corrected, her hands still tight on the controls as she piloted them away from the expanding debris field. "There's a difference." Tony collapsed into a seat, his armor finally giving up and retracting into emergency hibernation mode. He was bruised, exhausted, and his arc reactor was running at bare minimum capacity. But they were alive. Against all odds, they were alive. "FRID," he said weakly. "Status report. Armor at percent functionality. You... without major repairs. But boss, we... really good job. The Empire won't rebuild that. Years, if ever." "Good enough." Tony looked at Luke, who was cradling his injured arm but smiling with the wild relief of someone who'd survived the impossible. Then at Cypher 9, whose professional mask had cracked just enough to show the exhausted woman beneath. "So, anyone want to explain to Princess Leia how we almost died about 40 times in the last hour?" "You can do that," Luke said. "I'm just going to sleep for about 3 days." "Fair." As the Shadow's Edge jumped to hyperspace, leaving Rune and its destroyed research station behind, Tony Stark allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He'd saved the galaxy. Again, in a different universe with different rules, but the principle was the same. Somewhere out there, the rebellion was still fighting, the Empire was still powerful, Vader was still hunting, and Tony was still trapped in a reality far from home. But for today, they'd won. That would have to be enough. The Rebel fleet received them 3 days later, ships emerging from hyperspace at the predetermined rendezvous point deep in the Atorvis sector. The Redemption was there, along with a dozen other vessels that constituted the Alliance's mobile command structure. Princess Leia stood in the docking bay as the Shadow's Edge touched down, her expression carefully neutral, the mask of leadership that hid whatever relief or anger churned beneath. Tony limped down the boarding ramp, his armor still in hibernation mode, looking more like a battered refugee than an interdimensional hero. Luke followed, his injured arm properly bandaged now, exhaustion and triumph warring in his expression. Cypher 9 came last, the Imperial defector who'd sacrificed her cover to strike a devastating blow against the Empire. "You destroyed an entire Imperial research station," Leia said without preamble. "Killed a Grand Moff, eliminated technology that would have shifted the balance of power permanently. And you somehow survived 2 star destroyers, hundreds of stormtroopers, and a facility designed to be impregnable." Tony managed a tired smile. "When you put it that way, we sound pretty impressive. You sound reckless." But Leia's expression softened slightly. "You also sound like exactly what the rebellion needed." She looked at Luke and something passed between them, understanding born from shared loss and stubborn hope. "Both of you." The intelligence from Project Nullify spread through the Alliance leadership like wildfire. The Empire's attempt to weaponize force destruction, the evidence of interdimensional travelers predating Tony's arrival. the corrupted arc reactor technology, all of it painted a picture of an empire more desperate and more dangerous than anyone had realized. But it also proved the rebellion could strike back, could hit targets thought untouchable, could adapt and improvise and win against impossible odds. Tony spent the next 2 weeks rebuilding. Not just his armor, though Bisk and his team worked around the clock to repair the Mark 50's damage, but relationships, trust, and a place for himself in a galaxy that wasn't his own. He taught rebel engineers principles of energy efficiency and systems optimization. He helped Luke explore the intersection of technology and the Force, discovering that some mysteries couldn't be solved with equations alone. He learned about this galaxy's history, its conflicts, its hope. He also accepted that going home might take longer than he'd anticipated, or might never happen at all. "You're thinking about staying," Leia observed one evening. They stood together on the Redemption's observation deck, watching hyperspace flow past like a river of stars. "I'm thinking about the fact that my universe might not miss me as much as I'd like to believe," Tony admitted. "I snapped my fingers, erased half of Thanos' army. Should have died from the energy feedback. Maybe I did die, and this is something else. A second chance in a place where I can actually make a difference without carrying the weight of everyone I've lost. That's running away, maybe. Or maybe it's recognizing that heroism isn't about the universe you're in. It's about the choice to stand up when tyranny threatens, regardless of where you are." Tony glanced at her. "Your father gave Cipher 9 those codes because he believed in preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. I think he'd understand." Leia was quiet for a moment. Then, "The Alliance could use someone like you. Someone who thinks differently, who brings perspective from outside our conflicts and our history. But I won't lie to you, Tony. This fight is going to get worse before it gets better. The Empire won't forget what you did at Rune. Vader won't stop hunting Luke. And there are threats we don't even know about yet." "Sounds familiar?" Tony smiled slightly. "Every universe has its darkness. Every galaxy has its tyrants. And every rebellion needs people crazy enough to believe they can win." He tapped the arc reactor in his chest, its light steady and strong. "I've got clean energy, advanced technology, and a really impressive track record of not dying when I probably should have. Plus, I'm starting to understand this Force thing. Not feel it, I don't think I ever will, but understand how it works, how to account for it, maybe even how to enhance it with the right technology. That sounds dangerous." "The best ideas usually are." Tony turned to face her fully. "So here's my proposal, Princess. I'll stay. I'll fight. I'll help your rebellion become something the Empire can't ignore and can't crush. But I do it my way, with transparency, with innovation, and with the understanding that some battles can't be won with lightsabers and starfighters alone. You need infrastructure. You need logistics. You need to win not just militarily, but ideologically. Make people believe that the Empire can be defeated and half your work is done." Leia extended her hand. "Then welcome to the rebellion, Tony Stark, officially this time." He shook her hand, and in that moment, something fundamental shifted. He wasn't a refugee anymore, wasn't a lost traveler trying to find his way home. He was a rebel, committed to a cause in a galaxy far from his own, fighting a war that echoed every war he'd ever fought, against tyranny, against oppression, against the darkness that threatened to consume everything good. Somewhere in the galaxy, Darth Vader stood in his meditation chamber, feeling the disturbance in the Force that Tony Stark represented. An absence, a void, a challenge to everything the Sith understood about power and control. The Dark Lord had let them escape at Rune, not from mercy, but from curiosity. Luke Skywalker was important. The anomaly from another universe was important. Together, they represented something unprecedented, and Vader would understand them or he would destroy them. The galaxy turned, stars burned, and the war between Empire and Rebellion continued its deadly dance. But now there was a new variable in the equation. A man in iron armor with an arc reactor heart, bringing technology and determination from beyond the known universe. The Force had brought him here for a reason. Whether that reason led to salvation or catastrophe remained to be seen. But Tony Stark had never been one to shy away from impossible odds or uncertain futures. He'd saved one universe. Perhaps he could help save another. In the Rebel fleet, lights burned against the darkness of space. Ships carried soldiers who believed freedom was worth fighting for, and in one workshop on one corvette, Tony Stark bent over his armor, rebuilding it stronger, smarter, better. The Empire had advanced technology. The Sith had the Force. But the Rebellion had something neither could predict or control, a genius from another universe who'd learned that the most powerful weapon wasn't technology or mysticism. It was hope, combined with the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy would never be the same, and somewhere in the Force's vast tapestry of destiny, new threads were being woven, connections that would shape the future in ways no one could foresee. Tony Stark had entered a galaxy far, far away. What happened next would become legend.